Hello everyone, today we will continue to discuss Taylorism. But let's begin with a critique by Kafka. A contemporary asks Kafka if Taylorism might lead to the enslavement of mankind. His answer includes a harsh critique and even an indictment, an accusation against Taylorism. He believes that Taylorism might result in enslavement to evil. It is very important to remember this critique. Then let's discuss Lenin's opinion about Taylorism. Lenin, in his work of 1913, namely A Scientific System of Sweating, he adopts a critical attitude towards Taylorism. In this short article, from the beginning to the end, it was written to criticize Taylorism. In this article, Lenin says that the European bourgeoisie wants to borrow from America the latest methods of exploiting the workers. So for Lenin, this method, Taylorism, aims to make worker to spend 3 times more labor during the day with the same length when they work. So this means draining the worker, sucking out every drop of workers. So they work 3 times more when it is compared to the previous system. So it sucks out every drop of all physical energy. Lenin argues that the workers cannot endure such a treatment. But here Lenin sarcastically says that this would not be a problem for a capitalist and capitalism, because there is a reserve army of the unemployed people in advanced capitalism. As he argues, if he dies young, what happens? Well, there are many others waiting at the gate. He means by that reserve army of the unemployed. In 1914, namely the Taylor system, man's enslavement by the machine, Lenin uses a critical tone. He criticizes Taylor's system as man's enslavement by the machine. So Taylor's system is again viewed as one of the means of reducing production costs and exploiting the workers. Thus, it is consistent with the article of 1913, which is named Scientific System of Sweating. Here Lenin adds a new criticism to those he made in his earlier work. He argues that despite a fourfold increase in the production efficiency, productivity, the worker's wage is increased only half as much, and only for a short period of time. So, yes, there is an enormous gain in labor productivity, but wage is increased only half as much. So it leads to greater oppression and exploitation. Now, if we can summarize Lenin's criticism against Taylorism, we can say, according to Lenin, Taylorism makes the worker to do 4 times more labor during a working day of the same length. So it increases the productivity, it boosts the productivity rate. Taylorism makes unneeded workers unemployed. So there is a reserve army of unemployed. So Taylorism will lead to unemployment. Thirdly, Taylorism gives less wage increase for a short period of time. So 4 times higher, 4 times increased productivity rate. Yes, there is such a result, but there is only half as much increase in day wages and only for a short period of time. And finally, it exploits the worker. So Taylor is actually was criticized. Taylor was actually being criticized by Lenin as well. But when it comes to 1918, when it comes to the immediate tasks of the Soviet government, we read that more work, hard work, is legitimized by the concept of disciplined labor. Even Lenin emphasizes the need to apply Taylor's system. So here he believes that scientific and progressive parts of Taylorism should be adopted. So this time he does not speak about higher productivity of labor. No. He talks about the necessity of eliminating the unnecessary motions of the workers. He mentions the elaboration of correct methods of work. That's why he argues that they must organize in Russia the study and teaching of the Taylor system and systematically try it out and adapt it to our ends. By our ends, he means socialist aims. So here Lenin is very clear on the adaptation of the Taylor system in Russia and adaptation of this system to the objectives of socialism. So according to him, it is necessary to take into account of the characteristics of the period of transition from capitalism to socialism, and they should lay the foundations of socialist organization with reference to Taylorism. Even Lenin argues that the possibility of building socialism depends exactly on the success in combining the Soviet power and Taylorist scientific achievements. So he's trying to merge Soviet socialism and up-to-date achievements of capitalism. So critical tone is removed. What is positive related to Taylorism should be adopted for the sake of socialism, according to Lenin. And Lenin continues to argue in line with those of classical management school essay. According to Lenin, the Russian is a bad worker. So the task of the socialist government is to set those people in all its scope. I mean, they must learn to work. So it reminds us, theory X, very classical views of managerialism, classical managerialism. As you can remember from MacGregor, theory X assumes that the average man is lazy by his nature. So actor intervention is necessary. Discipline is necessary. So here actually Lenin is repeating these notions of classical management school. And Lenin clearly understands the importance of Taylorism. So that's why, according to him, Soviet socialism should adapt the achievements of science and technology. So Lenin differentiates two dimensions: favorable, favorable parts and unfavorable parts of capitalism, advantages and disadvantages parts of capitalism, including Taylorism. The first and unfavorable aspect of this system is that it is the refined form of brutal bourgeois exploitation. According to Taylor, they should not adopt this first and unfavorable aspect. But there is another aspect which is favorable according to Lenin, which is related to greatest scientific achievements of capitalism. So at this point, Lenin adopts technical and scientific parts of Taylorism. So according to him, what is advantages, what is favorable from Taylorism should be adopted. So that's why Lenin in 1918 is dividing Taylorism, or more broadly, is dividing scientific achievements of capitalism into two. Those uh, parts which are not favorable to socialism because it includes exploitation, but those which are favorable to socialism based on the scientific methods and achievements. So remember our discussion of classical management school. You need this at the expense of discipline, because you need to coordinate those efforts, those tasks. In order to coordinate, you need control. In order to control, you need discipline. In order to have a discipline, you need sanctions. And actually, Lenin is focusing on those notions. According to him, order, discipline, labor productivity, control must be settled in Soviet socialism. So according to him, according to Lenin, utilization of capitalist techniques of Taylorism is not only necessary but also essential to build socialism. But this is criticized by Frankfurt School, especially by Herbert Marcuse. According to him, such an approach can reduce the difference between two arch enemies, I mean socialism and capitalism. The qualitative difference between socialism and capitalism is being obliterated by the boost, by the sweep of productivity. And even Marcuse criticizes, for example, repressive Stalinist development of socialism, and it weakens the possibility of being an attractive alternative to capitalism. So that's why this point is very important according to Herbert Marcuse. Because if you continue to implement those principles, then the socialist image can be obscured and socialism can begin to become like its enemies. I mean capitalism. Thank you for listening and see you later.